Now going from there, we're going to move on to super middleweight and kind of middleweight a little bit, depending on where this fight could go. And that is Billy Joe Saunders, talking about some of the options he has if the fight doesn't happen with Canelo. And quite frankly, I don't think this fight's going to happen, but I am going to talk about some of the other options and what my opinion is on if he does fight any one of these three guys. So first, I like the idea of the Callum Smith fight. I think Callum Smith is vulnerable. I often feel like he is a good boxer. At the same time, I think he's beatable, and I think John Ryder kind of exposed him a little bit that he is beatable. So I would very much like to see what Billy Joe Saunders would do there. I think he fits well into 168, but personally, I like to see him down at 160, so that's why I'm a little bit more intrigued by the other two opponents. I love the idea of him fighting Andrade, just because that fight was supposed to happen, and then, you know, if you don't know already by now, he had the PED scandal, and that just didn't end up happening. And then I also think that for the British fan base, especially, you know, Chris Eubank Jr. would be a great fight. In the UK in general, that would be an easier fight to probably make happen in comparison to, you know, having Billy Joe Saunders fly over to the US and dealing with some of that kind of messy kind of ordeal of traveling. Now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way and who he might end up fighting, I think that it's kind of key to kind of point out that I don't think that he's going to get the Canelo fight. I know that they kind of had a deal beforehand, and there was this fight that was going to happen at 168, but it looked like they had a done deal for 168, and that was going to happen in the spring this year. But obviously with everything that's going on, it didn't happen. And so then they had to kind of go back to the drawing board and kind of hash things out a little bit. And I'm guessing when that happened, Billy Joe Saunders just maybe asked for too much money, or for whatever reason couldn't meet the needs that Canelo's camp wanted. And quite honestly, I'm not surprised. I sometimes think guys that are in the UK think that their value carries over here to the US a little bit too much. Just a little bit, especially for fan bases. Your UK fan base knows you very well, but you also have to remember that your pay-per-view prices and sometimes non-existent pay-per-view prices for fights in the UK don't translate well to the US. And granted, it's nice that they're both on DAZN, so that makes it a little bit easier in terms of just promotion and makes it easier in terms of network. But at the same time, you have to look at the fact that Canelo pretty much is going to bring all of the fans in for that fight from the US. When it comes to the gate, it's gonna be all Canelo, not really a Billy Joe Saunders fan base. It's not like Tyson Fury where he brought over a lot of fans and they traveled for him. They probably can't do that for this fight. And same thing goes with like classic Ricky Hatton fans. They used to travel across wherever Ricky went, that's where they'd go. That's not going to happen with Billy Joe Saunders. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, let me know down in the comments. You know, you British boxing fans, maybe Billy Joe Saunders does have that kind of fan base. I don't think he does, and I don't think he's as popular as he thinks he is. I think he's probably well known in the UK, but just here in the US, he's just not really a household name like some other UK boxers. So I think that for him to kind of come in and demand a lot of money, or whatever kind of circumstances that he can't make a deal with Canelo, you know, he should try to find a way to do that. I also think fan base of the UK or UK boxers not really understanding their value when it comes to sometimes the US market is this kind of statement that was made by Callum Smith's coach, talking about, you know, he wants to fight, but he's got to make a serious offer. What he offered you is a serious offer. That's probably all he's willing to give you, and he really doesn't need Callum Smith. Callum Smith needs him, and if you really think that your fighter can beat Canelo, then you should have that fight. Why? Because if you get a low offer, right, and you beat Canelo though, your rematch is going to be huge. Look at what Andy Ruiz did. Andy Ruiz took a very low amount of money for the Anthony Joshua fight, and a lot of other people didn't take the fight because they didn't feel like they were going to get offered enough money. Look how much Andy Ruiz made in the rematch. The same thing would happen if there was a rematch with Canelo if Callum Smith won. If you really think you can beat Canelo, take what he will give you, and then the rematch will pay for itself at least a couple times over. Plus, on top of that, the news and just advertisements alone for that fighter would just go up through the roof. Whether it's Billy Joe Saunders, whether it's Callum Smith, whoever it is, I'm not saying you have to completely bow down, but think of the upside if you could really feel like you're going to win. If you really think that you have the skills to beat him, why not take the chance? It's still going to pay fairly decent, and what you could end up gaining is significantly more what Canelo gains from beating you. He might gain a few belts, but he's not going to gain more fans. He's not going to gain more money out of it. He's getting almost nothing out of it other than maybe a title or two, which he doesn't even need. So in the end, you gain a lot more from him and having a fight with him than he does from you. And that's just my general perspective on this kind of situation. Now we're going to be moving.